end by saying this. The great American philosopher Beyonce Knowles said that it has been said that racism is so American that if you challenge racism, you look like you're challenging America. We are challenging inequality. We are challenging the refusal to see me as an individual. When we overcome that, have at it, we're all on equal plane.
I think it's good. The pot is getting stirred here.
So I've got a couple of questions.
So let's your side spoke, so I'm going to go to Jordan, then to you.
Let's assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's fine. That's what you would say. So, so let's say, here, let's get precise about this, okay?
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this, okay?
Let's get precise.
To what degree is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do you mean 15%? Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it?
When you asked people what they meant by political correctness, you know, they called a woman they worked with girl and she got mad at them. And, you know, you couldn't in public wonder aloud whether the president of the United States was really a Muslim. You know, they didn't like that they couldn't make gay jokes anymore. And so on the one hand, you're right, and I've written about this. I think that when you try to, you know, that when people have these prejudices and you try to suppress them, it can create a kind of dangerous counter-reaction. But I also think that, you know, what they were reacting to, again, to go back to the title of this debate, what they call political correctness, you know, the fact that they had to have this urbane black president who they felt talked down to them, which is really what they meant. I don't see a way around that.
I don't know if I agree with that. As we can see now, some of the concerns people had with political correctness even 4 years ago were valid. You know, people are now unable to express themselves freely, and there are much more restrictions in the way people are able to, in the way people live. So those complaints and those concerns were valid. It's not simply people being concerned that they can't say what they want to say at the workplace. It was people looking at the cliff that we were about to fall off of as a society.
Go to the question of when the left goes too far. I mean, to me, it's pretty easy. Violence and censorship, right? I'm against violence and I'm against censorship. But I also, looking around the world right now, when the idea that there is this, I understand again, that there is like a problem of kind of left-wing annoyance, right? There's a lot of things that kind of people, random people on the internet in particular, are able to swarm individuals and turn kind of stray remarks into social media campaigns, and this is often, you know, conflated with political correctness, and it's a bad phenomenon. I wish there was a way to put an end to it. I don't think there is no way to put an end to it simply by having kind of reasonable liberals or reasonable socialists denounce it, because it's just a kind of awful phenomenon of modern life. And if you want to have a debate about whether social media is terrible for democracy, I will be on the gay side. But right now, where I really disagree, well,
Clearly, seems like she's minimizing the impact that social media has had in being a sort of incubator for fucked up ideas. Social media is literally a bootloader for the most outrageous shit taking place in society right now. When you have companies bowing down to random social media mobs for fear that their brand might be tarnished, that means they have power. So it's not something to minimize. It's in my opinion, one of the more important threats. The potential to manipulate and hijack public discourse and sentiment through coordinated social media campaigns. Obviously, back then that used to happen with journalism. All these institutions were captured, but now it's even worse because the scale at which you can spread this nonsense is insane.
A couple places I really disagree. But the idea that the radical left poses a greater threat than the radical right, when you see like actual fascism ascendant all over the world, strikes me as something that you can literally only believe if you spend your life on college campuses.
So,
that's one thing. One thing I always hear people say, and I'm always confused by it because it doesn't seem real. It doesn't sound true. Like pretty much the whole world is on high alert for any signs of fascism or racism, any of these wild ass ideas. Like, where are these fascists at that are curtailing our rights, especially in the Western world? Any person with any fascist tendencies or inclinations is immediately banned, immediately stamped out and removed from polite society.
Mike, I want to come to you on those, on Jordan's point about how does he, in a sense, get an equal voice in this debate back if it is implied that his participation brings with it this baggage of white privilege that doesn't allow him to see clearly the issues that are before us.
But that is to be complicit in the very problem itself, terminologically. You're beginning at a point that's already productive and controversial. You're saying, how can he get his equality back? Who are you talking about? Jordan Peterson? Trending #1 on Twitter?
Oh, Lord. Can you speak normally?
Jordan Peterson? With an international bestseller? I want him to tweet something out about me in my book. Jordan Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man, and you're going to get us right. And I have never seen so much wine and snowflaking. There's enough wine in here to start a vineyard. And what I'm saying to you empirically and precisely, when you ask the question about white privilege, the fact that you ask it in the way you did, dismissive, pseudoscientific, non-empirical, and without justification, the truth is that white privilege doesn't act according to quantifiable segments. It's about the degree to which we are willing as a society to grapple with the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality upon which it's based. Number two, what's interesting to me, you're talking about not having a collective identity. What do you call a nation? Are you Canadian? Are you Canadian by yourself? Are you an individual, or are you part of a group? When America formed its union, it did so in opposition to another group. So the reality is that those who are part of group identities in politics deny the legitimacy and validity of those groups and the fact that they have been created thusly, and then have resentment against others. All I'm asking for is the opportunity. The quotation you talk about, the difference between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity, that's a staid and retried argument, hackneyed phrase, derived from the halcyon days of the debate over affirmative action. Are you looking for outcomes that can be determined equally, or are you looking for opportunity? If you free a person after a whole long time of oppression and say now you are free to survive, if you have no skills, if you have no quantifiable means of existence, what you have done is liberated them into oppression. And all I'm suggesting to you, Lyndon Baines Johnson, one of our great presidents, said, if you start a man in a race 100 years behind, it is awfully difficult to catch up. So I don't think Jordan Peterson is suffering from anything except an exaggerated sense of entitlement and resentment, and his own privilege is invisible to him, and it's manifest with lethal intensity and ferocity right here on stage.
It still doesn't change the fact that you can't just assume a person is privileged simply because they're white, which is why he asks you to be specific as to how much his white privilege has impacted his life and his success. It's a dangerous game to play when you just start looking at individuals and judging them as a group. And it's also dehumanizing. You can't just look at a person and because they're white decide, oh, they've benefited from white privilege, or that they have an easier or better or more privileged life than you. And you also shouldn't want to legislate based on these group outcomes. Innocent people are going to get punished. Imagine a guy who grew up in a single parent household whose mom worked her whole life, and a woman who grew up in a two-parent household whose dad was a CEO. Who's more oppressed in that scenario? And then they both enter the workplace and the woman is receiving preferential treatment over the guy, and they justify it by saying women have been historically oppressed. Who's oppressed in that scenario? Not only did he not have the privilege of having two parents in the home, but he's going to get punished for being a fucking man. So you'll have a woman who grew up wealthy and rich being told she's oppressed by a guy who's poor. You'll have a black person who grew up super wealthy getting privileged over a white man who grew up poor. It doesn't make any sense. It's not fair. It's unjust. It's inhumane. Any system that prioritizes the group over the individual is inherently unjust. You can't be committed to group justice and individual justice at the same time. These are two different things. If you're focused on the group justice, then inevitably innocent people are going to get punished. The most just system judges people as individuals.
Jordan, I'm going to have to let you respond to that if you will.
Well, what I derive from that series of rebuttals, let's say, is twofold. The first is that saying that the radical left goes too far when they engage in violence is not a sufficient response by any stretch of the imagination, because there are sets of ideas in radical leftist thinking that led to the catastrophes of the 20th century, and that was at the level of idea, not at the level of violent action. It's a very straightforward thing to say you're against violence. It's like being against poverty. It's like, you know, generically speaking, decent people are against poverty and violence. It doesn't address the issue in the least. And with regards to my privilege or lack thereof, I mean, I'm not making the case that I haven't had advantages in my life and disadvantages in my life like most people. You don't know anything about my background or where I came from. It doesn't matter to you because fundamentally I'm a mean white man. That's a hell of a thing to say in a debate.
Like, I am not spiritually equipped to interface with these types of people. Like, these people are a different breed. Like, you can't interface with them. You just have to not, oh, what? That's crazy. Okay, cool. And just keep it moving. What a classless individual.
Let me just say,
Very, very brief, because I want to move on to men and women. A good topic next.
the mean mad white comment was not predicated upon my historical excavation of your past. It's based upon the evident vitriol with which you speak and the denial of a sense of equanimity among combatants in an argument. So I'm saying again, you're a mean mad white man and the viciousness is evident.
This guy loves to hear himself speak. That's what believing this type of nonsense leads to. You start to disrespect individuals because they're part of a group. This fucking tribal mentality. But anyways, that was the video. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree with what I said, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to hear your disagreements and have a fruitful discussion. Make sure you guys like and subscribe.